Good evening, everyone. I'm the storyteller, and I am here to help you sleep better with true horror stories. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like my video. I would love to know where you are from and what time you're watching this video. So please leave a comment to let me know, and I will draw from that experience to tell even better stories. When you are ready, feel free to relax. This was only 2 years ago in our town. There was this one house that had been abandoned for I think about 2 decades. It was an older place nestled away in the trees, and after nobody would buy it one just forgot about it. It slowly got covered up by the woods and left to rot. I was always interested in these types of places and loved to explore them. In one random afternoon, I had off work that sea. Exactly what I did, I walked there with a small backpack and a flashlight. Usually I go with friends, but this house was so close by and seemed less significant than other places we've been to, so I didn't bother. The driveway going into the woods was almost completely gone. Grass had grown over the gravel. I marched my way through it, eventually taking my flashlight out so I could see better. The house was deeper into the woods than I remembered. I felt like I walked for 5 or 6 minutes before getting there. It was an old wooden home built before garages were even a thing. I guess it kind of looked like a large 2-story cabin. I walked up to one of the front windows, which was broken, and leaned my head through it. I listened to the inside for 30 seconds to make sure I was alone. Then, after hearing nothing, I went to the front door. The door was unlocked and already slightly cracked open, so I just pushed it wide open and walked in. The inside was decaying all around disturbingly. There was still stuff in here from whoever owned it all those years ago. The living room had an old sofa, all torn up and dusty, and there were several picture frames that had fallen off the walls and shattered. I walked through the first floor, looking at all the left behind things, curious about what I'd find out about this place. The floor was small, though. After just a minute or two, I went upstairs to the second floor. The stairs were creaky and shaky. I'm surprised they hadn't caved in already. The second floor had a hallway with 2 rooms. One of the doors was open and the other was closed. I looked into the open one. The room was empty, which was strikingly different from downstairs. I stepped in and moved my flashlight all around, but was interrupted when I heard a thud below me. My heart immediately started racing. It didn't sound natural, like a noise the house would make. I hurried down the stairs and waved my flashlight all around. The house was so quiet now, and I didn't see anything moving that could have made the sound. Having that bad gut feeling, though, I told myself I should just leave. Usually, with my friends I explore with, we always say at the first sign of anything sketchy, we leave. Being alone, I definitely wasn't staying. I quickly walked down the hallway, still moving my flashlight all around, but when I got to the front of the house, the door was shut. I had left it wide open. I rushed to the door and yanked the handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked or bolted shut from the outside. Panic set in as I realized someone else must be here with me, having locked me in. I dashed to the broken window and leaped out, scanning for any sign of life as I sprinted into the woods, turning off my flashlight and avoiding the path. My heart raced as I navigated through the trees, but then I spotted a light ahead. Confused, I ducked behind a tree. It was a flickering red and blue light at the end of the driveway. 2 police cars cut through the thick grass, heading toward the abandoned house, passing right by me. Hastily making my way to the front of the house, I stayed concealed, sensing deep down that they weren't there for me. I observed for a moment, then dashed out of the woods and back home. I had no idea who else was present or the reason behind the police's urgent arrival. In the following weeks, I attempted to uncover more details, but nothing was ever disclosed to the public. Whatever transpired inside, or whoever was involved, must have been serious. I feel fortunate to be here today. It was the year 2016. I lived with my 2 best friends, who I'll call Jason and Andrew for privacy. We were all roommates in an apartment in the city while we finished up our last year of college, because we were all in SCH. And had jobs. We didn't often have a lot of free time. When we did, though, our usual activity that we all enjoyed was hiking, or I guess just exploring in general. Sometimes we'd go on trails or just arrive to a random town we hadn't been to before and walk around. This week we all had Friday and Saturday off, so we wanted to find something to do on Friday night. Andrew had happened to hear for free earlier about this decommissioned factory on the outside of the city. It sounded cool, or interesting at the very least. None of us had done something like this before, though, so we were all hesitant. In the end, we said screw it and just decided to check it out. We hopped in Jason's car and drove to the edge of the city. We live in the Midwest, so the city sort of abruptly ends and turns into flat land that goes on as far as you could see. That was basically where this factory was. We didn't know its exact address, if it even still had one, but we found it on Google Maps using the satellite view. We parked a block away at a gas station, then got out and walked the rest the whole street. To get there was empty, no cars or people anywhere. It almost felt like the entire block was abandoned. The factory building was way bigger than any of us were expecting. It was massive with railing-type structures all over the outside and tons of graffiti in places. I don't even know how people were able to get a TH. Each chain-link fence had barbed wire across the top, but in several spots, it had clearly been cut open and moved from other sneaking, and we crawled over and made our way up to the metal door at the front, which was already open. As soon as we stepped inside, chills ran through me. The whole building was swaying, and the metal was creaking and groaning. It was windy outside, so it made sense, I guess, but SD. Ill added to the eeriness of the place, all the lights were off, of course. So our only light was some cheap flashlights Andrew had lying around his house. This main room we were in was full of huge, rusted machinery in narrow pathways between them. We all stayed in that room and kind of just wandered around. Eventually, I wandered to the end of the room and into a hallway. But before entering, I checked over my shoulder and saw one of my buddies was not too far behind me. I couldn't discern whether it was Andrew or Jason, as they were shrouded in darkness near one of the machines. However, I assumed they had spotted me, allowing me to proceed without the risk of getting separated and lost. I began to walk down the corridor, reaching another metal door and passing through it just as it began to close behind me. As I entered the next room, I heard footsteps approaching from the direction I had just come. Assuming it was Andrew and Jason, I continued forward, shining my light around the room. There were more machines, resembling a conveyor belt, positioned in the center, while a catwalk stretched along the ceiling. I noticed a ladder hanging down on the opposite side. Just then, I heard the door behind me open and close. I called out my friends' names, turning to share what I had discovered. But when my light illuminated the door, they were nowhere to be found. For a moment, I questioned my sanity, but I was certain I had heard the door open. Andrew? Jason? Their names echoed through the room, yet silence lingered in response. I cautiously approached the door, anxiety creeping into my thoughts. As I opened it and directed my light down the empty hallway, confusion washed over me. Suddenly, a faint rustle behind me snapped my attention. I turned my light to reveal a disheveled man, wild hair and a tangled beard framing his unsettling gaze. Without warning, he charged at me, as if intent on tackling me. I retreated into the hallway, slamming the door shut and racing toward the other end. I could hear my friends shouting my name, as if they were searching for me. I burst into the room, shouting for everyone to leave. We all dashed out, reaching the fence and escaping. As we made our way back to the car, I recounted the events. The man lurking in the building had trailed me into the hallway and into the room where I was isolated. Clearly, he intended to wait for me to separate from the group before making his move. What he might have done remains a mystery, and I consider myself fortunate not to have discovered it. Since that incident, we haven't attempted anything like it again. This was nearly 5 years ago from when I'm writing this. I was in high school at the time, and my best friend was a guy named Colton. We hung out most days after school and just found random places to go. To hang out at anyway, this was right after our school let out for winter break. So we had a ton of time and nothing to do. We spent this whole day just chilling at his place and playing Xbox, but we even. Till we got bored, we felt like walking around or going somewhere. Now, our whole town always knew about this creepy church that sat at the end of a deserted road. It was kind of blocked out by trees since. They stopped keeping up with it. It had been abandoned for as long as I'd known about it. But even though we always knew about it, it had never really come across our minds to explore it when I was a kid. I was always terrified of it, but for some reason now, I was a little bit more intrigued. So when me and Colton were walking around the edge of town and happened to pass by the deserted road to the Chuck, we decided to check it out, at least to walk down the road and see what it looked like nowadays. And if nobody else was there, maybe look inside. It was already dark out, but the moon was bright in. For us to still kind of see where we were going. We also had our phones on us in case we needed a flashlight. The road was in disarray, cracked and overrun with thick vines and bushes that crept between the pavement. By the time we reached the end and glanced back, the street we had just traversed was completely obscured. The church loomed ahead, far creepier than I recalled, as if the forest had claimed it entirely. The fence surrounding the courtyard was nearly unrecognizable, swallowed by the towering plants that enveloped it. We navigated through a broken section, the silence deepening as we neared the church. No lights flickered, no sounds hinted at the presence of others. So we approached the imposing entrance door and pushed it open. The sound was reminiscent of bending wood, creaking and scraping across the floor, echoing throughout the vast room. We lingered at the threshold for a moment, taking in the scene from our vantage point. What struck me as particularly strange and somewhat unsettling was how the entire room, lined with rows of benches, appeared almost pristine. There was no debris in sight, nor any graffiti that one might anticipate in a location of this age. I took a step inside, and Colton trailed closely behind me. I made my way down the aisle, taking in the surroundings as each step reverberated against the vaulted ceilings. As we approached the end, a sudden thud pierced the air, resonating throughout the entire church. Both of us startled, quickly retrieving our phone flashlights. The source of the sound remained elusive, enveloping the space in an unsettling echo. We froze, sweeping our lights in search of the cause, yet found nothing amiss. Colton believed he spotted another room nearer to the entrance. Perhaps something had toppled over inside. Nevertheless, we continued our exploration. I made my way to the end of the hall where the podium stood. From that vantage point, I glanced back at the path we had taken. The darkness by the entrance was so profound that even my light struggled to penetrate it. After a moment, Colton expressed his desire to investigate the other room, so we both moved in that direction. On the side wall, I found a door, opened it, and directed my light inside. From my brief inspection, I couldn't discern the purpose of the room. We entered and surveyed the scene. Chairs piled against the wall and boxes scattered about, reminiscent of storage space. Suddenly, a sound pierced the stillness, a light thump, followed by another. It resembled footsteps echoing down the aisle we had just traversed. We both froze, the noise emanating from the podium area, advancing toward the entrance. Our view was limited to a narrow crack in the doorway, yet we fixated on the encroaching darkness, holding our breath as the sound drew nearer. Then, in an instant, a figure slipped through the shadows and exited through the front door. As the footsteps drew nearer, we found ourselves frozen in place, holding our breath in anticipation. The creak of the door echoed ominously, and we exchanged fearful glances, uncertain whether to flee or conceal ourselves. Time stretched as we remained paralyzed by dread, waiting for what felt like an eternity until we finally dared to believe that the presence had departed. In a burst of adrenaline, we dashed from the room and out into the open, not stopping until we reached the desolate road that led us to safety. The identity of the intruder remained a mystery, emerging from the shadows of the church I had just visited. With no visible exits nearby, it was as if they had been lurking in the darkness, mere inches away. Now, years later, I find it impossible to discern the truth of that night. I hope your day is filled with health and joy. I invite you to subscribe to my channel to hear true horror stories. Hello, and see you again.